Hello class, welcome to the third part of our learning. My name is Velma Atieno, your English tutor. We'll continue looking at the oral narratives. We've identified types of oral narratives. We've looked at the myths, we've looked at the legends, we've looked at the folk tales, we've looked at the fairy tales too, and we've seen the difference between the two of them. We've seen the difference between myths and legends. We've seen the difference too between folk tales and fairy tales. We've discussed their different features, and we've discussed their meanings and their importance too. So right now I want us to jump through that and focus our attention to another type of narrative, epics. Now, what is an epic narrative? Epic narratives are long, heroic stories that recount the adventures, deeds, and trials of legendary heroes and heroines. These narratives are often set in a grand and methodological past, and they serve to celebrate cultural values, historical events, or heroic qualities of their protagonist. Epics typically are characterized by their length, complexity, and elevated style. Now, I will explain all this. Don't worry, this is a lot of wording here, but it's a simple thing to understand. An epic generally, it's just a long story or a long narrative that basically talks about a legend, and this legend can be a hero or a heroine, and most of the time it gives the past, so it gives the past events or what the legend did, but now it will talk about their historical past in a way that it will talk about different events that they took part in. It will talk about different adventures they took part in, and one key factor you will notice is that it has a varied storyline, a lengthy storyline, and different storylines. So as we continue, we will be able to understand what epics are. If you still don't understand, we will get to understand what they are. Now we'll look at the features of epic narratives. How can you tell that this is an epic narrative from this other? How can you tell the difference between the two? So what is an epic narrative, and how can you tell it from other narratives? One feature is heroic protagonist. Epics typically revolve around a heroic central character who embarks on a grand quest or series of adventures. This hero often possesses extraordinary qualities such as courage, strength, intelligence, or charisma. Now, one key feature for one to know whether a story is an epic or not is that they contain a heroic protagonist. Leave alone the legendary narratives we looked at. No, when you talk about epic narratives, they have heroic protagonists, and one key factor is that the narrative will talk about the quest or series of adventures the hero took part in or the heroine took part in to conquer a quest or to come up with the positive outcome for the community. So there's always an heroic protagonist. Another feature is the vast scope. What do I mean by a vast scope? Basically, a vast scope is a wide view or a wide picture of something, so, or a wide event of something, exactly. So epics cover a wide range of events, often spanning vast landscapes, generations, or multiple plot lines. They involve epic battles, journeys, and encounters with supernatural beings. Now, when I talk about a vast scope, I just say that epics are lengthy, so they are long, and they give adventures of certain superheroes or certain heroes and heroines. So why do they have a vast scope? This is because they will not only talk about what the superheroes did, but they will give different plot lines. For example, I will give an example here. So there is this community or this village or group of people that are stuck in an island and they don't know how to get out. So how does an epic narration come through? So there's this hero or this person who will come out of the crowd and take courage and confidence and decide to be the way, or decide to come up with a solution where he wants to find a way out of the island. So with this event, we will see him take on the quest, take different adventures. So during the quest, he will have various adventures, and this is where the twist comes in. You will see various plot lines. There will be a change in the plot lines. For example, you will one part we see are with the villagers or the people. The second plot line is in a forest where he's trying to find his way out, and here he will meet different supernatural beings, and during the journey too he will have battles, he will have challenges, he will face a lot during the journey. And again we'll have another plot where he's almost finding a way. So basically what I'm trying to say is that epics have a wide range of events. They will give a lengthy story or a lengthy narration on a plot line or specific details as to how the solution that the hero came up with helped the people. Another a feature is elevated language. What do I mean by elevated language? When you compare a fairy tale and compare it to maybe an epic, you'll see a difference in the language that is being used. And what do I mean by this? So with elevated language, epics are known for their use of elevated poetic language. They often employ formal and elaborate styles of storytelling. So one feature or one thing that you'll notice with epic narratives, they have some poetic features in them. They employ the use of poetic language in them, and they also employ the use of a formal language or elaborate style of storytelling. So there's a difference. It's like using a huge language or using some specific words that bring in poetic meaning or poetic factors compared to other narrations or other narratives like the folk tales, like the fairy tales, like the legendary narrations too. So there's a difference between the two. So these are the sum of the features I'll look at today. So I've talked about heroic protagonist, right? I've talked about a vast scope, and I've talked about elevated language. So these are some of the different features that are conveyed in an epic narrative. Let's move on and we'll look at the importance of epic narratives. Why should I study epic narratives, or why should I know epic narratives? What is the importance of knowing epic narratives? So the importance of knowing epic narratives is cultural identity. Epic narratives are centered to cultural identity, and often epic values, beliefs, and ideals that a society holds dear. They help define and reinforce a sense of cultural identity. Like I said, heroes and heroines are defined, or communities have defined their own heroes and defined their own characters. So when you sit around a table, or rather you sit around a fire, and your grandparents or your relatives are giving you a story of a certain hero, you will notice that the story majorly based on your community and the challenges your community faced, and what hero or which hero decided to come help the people of your community. So this is what we call cultural identity. You're able to identify with your character, or rather your culture, know what your culture entails, know what your values, beliefs, and that your culture holds dear to. So this is one importance of epic narratives. Historical memory. Epic narratives incorporate historical events or figures, preserving and transmitting important moments from culture's past or from a culture's past. Now, what do I mean by historical memories? The moment we share or stories are being shared to us, we keep them in mind, right? So for example, like I gave an example again, you went to visit your grandparents or you went to visit your relatives, and through this you find that you're being engaged in different narrations. They're telling you different narrations or a story or an historical event that happened in the past, or several generations that passed before you were born. So one thing you realize is that this narrative, after listening to the epics or any other narrative, you will keep the history in your memory, or you will have the history with you. So one important thing is to preserve. So one thing we're doing is we're preserving the history, and we're also transmitting the important moments from a culture's past. So one important moment, maybe when I gave an example about a community that is stuck in an island, one important element in them is how an hero a hero helped them find a way out of the island. So this is an important element or an important moment for them, and they wouldn't want to forget that. So as generations come and go, as in each generation passes, they will pass down this story down the memory line. They will pass it down so that they can preserve their story and their history, and they can preserve their culture too, and important moments to them. Morals and ethical, or moral and ethical guidance. Now, epic often convey a moral and ethical lesson through the actions and choices of the heroic characters, serving as a proper behavior and virtuous living. Now, for example, what morals do you learn from an epic story? When you get back here to what an epic story is, what an epic narrative is, these are narratives that are long, heroic stories that recount the adventures, deeds, and trials of a legendary hero or heroines. The narrations are often set in a grand and mythological past, and they serve to celebrate cultural values, historical events, or the heroic qualities of their protagonist. Epics typically characterized by their length, complexity, and elevated style. So, now, after learning what an epic narrative is, and learning that mainly it talks about a legend who took a grand quest to save the community. So here we learn different values, right? So before I say them out, I want you to think of certain values, of different types of values that you learn from knowing an epic narrative. And such values are like courage, intelligence, strength, right? So these are some of the values that we attain from listening or learning about epic narratives. So epic often contains moral and ethical themes. So what is the moral of listening to an epic theme? Now you'll be able to learn that it takes courage to take, when you're taking risk, you have to take courage with you. You have to have courage. You have to be courage itself, right? You have to have courage within you to conquer certain quests or to conquer certain risks. Now these are the morals we learn from listening to epic narratives, and they have also various themes, or the best themes, and that will reflect on our values and virtues. Themes like courage, intelligence, and strength, and there are many other themes that the epic narratives explore. Elevated language. Elevated language. What do I mean by elevated language? So we have morals, elevated language. So with the elevated language, this is a way of which you identify how an epic element is, or what an epic narration is. So with the elevated language, is basically a poetic. You will notice some poetic structure or poetic intelligence in the narration of an epic, or narration of an epic story. Moral and ethical guidance. This is another importance of why we learn epical stories. Epic often convey moral and ethical lessons through their actions and choice of their heroic characters, serving as a guidance of proper behavior and virtuous living. I've talked about ethical guidance. It guides us on how to live our lives, on how to respect others, how to take courage, and how to help others solve their problems. So it's not in the benefit of yourself or the personal gain, but a community's gain too. So this is one importance of studying epics. Historical memory, I talked about this. Like, one importance of studying epics is to equip yourself with the memory of the past, where your community came from, challenges that your community has faced, and the different heroes that the community has had. So these are some of the importance of studying epics. The cultural identity, knowing your culture and where you are from and what your culture believes in, and the heroes that stood firm for your community and led the way to a civilization. Also historical memory, so that we study epics or know epics narratives, so that we can keep in mind the historic memories that happened in the past, heroic figures, and also have in mind what they did to support the community. And moral and ethical guidance too. They help us convey a moral, ethical, and learn lessons and draw lessons from the story. So class, today we're just going to look at the epics and the importance, but we'll expound more on this and learn more on this, and what are the reflections we can make from epic narrations?